Sup everyone, we're back with more Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. Time to move on to New Horizons, and by New Horizons I am referring to hospital. Is it time to meet Mr. Vigil at the hospital? This is the ward where Mr. Vigil was brought, apparently. To be frank, I'm a little worried about seeing him again. There he is. Ah, the lawyer. Hello again. Are you feeling better now, Mr. Vigil? This is new music, by the way. Yes, thank you. Somewhat better. I'm so sorry to have caused you to... I mean, it was because of me. If I hadn't exposed your secret and forced you to remember things, you'd obviously try to forget. Man, that is a deep bend you were doing despite having no arm support. The prosecutor was here until a few moments ago, too. You just missed him. Oh, Cosmo beat us to it. He said much the same as you. He was very apologetic. But the truth is, I brought all this upon myself. Please, don't think like that. Keeping it from Evie, my wife, all these years, I've carried such a sense of guilt. But that's not the worst of it. Over time, I obviously came to deceive myself as well. You mean about your dismissal? Looking back now, I'm beginning to think that perhaps Inspector Gregson didn't stumble across me by accident at all. I mean, he compensated me so generously for acting as his stand-in. He was clearly concerned for my well-being and doing what he could to help. So perhaps Gregson knew exactly what had become of Mr. Vigil all along then. I'm sure this is just desserts for 10 years of lies and deception, but... It wasn't me that helped the professor escape 10 years ago. It wasn't me. I swear it. I swear it's true. Oh, Mr. Vigil. I'm sure you'd rather not dredge up even more from your past at this time, but... If possible, could you tell us exactly what really happened? And you are not looking good. Between your neck and your face. I want to... I need to get all this off my chest. I just want someone to tell me what I should have done. Alright, man. We'll talk. I say as I click move on accident. Wow, that was real bad. It's like, alright, we'll talk. Later, I have stuff to do. Inspector Gregson was obviously engaged in a special operation of some sort. He was investigating something that even Scotland Yard couldn't know about. Details of the Reaper's marks, yes? It was when he had to carry out those investigations that I would take his identification papers and impersonate him. You pretend to be the inspector and carry out investigations on his behalf. Oh no, never. A common street peddler couldn't possibly carry out a proper police investigation. All I would do is go to the specified location and make a little hoo-ha. Just something to leave an impression, so everyone there would think a detective called Gregson was here. So, that's what you were doing on the day prior to the incident? Yes, he asked me to make an appearance at the park on Lime Street for the Red-Headed League event. So as usual, I flashed the inspector's identification around and was very vocal about my presence. But then you were taken prisoner by those red-headed fraudsters. Yes. I almost forgot you were here, Iris. You've been very quiet this entire scene. So, you would always make a point of showing Gregson's identification and generally being loud? That's what the inspector asked me to do, yes.
Well, that's one way of becoming a legendary detective, I suppose. Not a good one, though.
Yeah, that's less so legendary and more so infamous. And as you know, I suffered this bruising around my neck at their hands. But the following day, they kept their word and released me. Without returning the inspector's identification to you, however. We had arranged to meet in the Fresno Street room at 5 that day so I could report back to the inspector. But at the agreed time, that's when I heard the gunshot. Wow. It was at midnight on 17th of June 10 years ago. That was the time scheduled for the execution. But the professor's execution never actually took place, did it?
Or rather, the execution itself must have been used to affect the plan of escape. I hardly dare to imagine what a chilling plan it was.
Barclay was renowned for being the highest security prison in the country. Everything that went in or out of the place was searched multiple times. But there was one notable exception. Or rather, one notable loophole. Something was never questioned. I have a feeling I know what that loophole was now. The coffins into which the body of the executed convicts were placed, correct? Yes. Once the coroner had confirmed the death of a condemned convict, the body was taken in its coffin for immediate burial in Lowgate Cemetery just behind the prison. The chief warder first had to sign the necessary papers. And after that, no member of staff was permitted to touch the coffin containing the body again. When executions took place, only the executioner and the coroner were permitted inside the chamber. I would wait in the adjacent room for word that the condemned convict was dead. On that occasion, once I had that confirmation, I went into the mortuary to find a lone coffin as usual. The procedure was that I would sign the paperwork having checked the coffin, then nail it shut. But for some reason that day, the coffin was already nailed shut.
No!
I didn't think anything of it at the time. I assumed that my deputy must have checked the coffin and nailed it shut before I arrived.
So, you mean the coffin contained...
Yes, I can only imagine that Asogi, having escaped his execution somehow, was alive inside the coffin. The coffin was then taken out through the main gates and deposited in Lowgate Cemetery.
Presumably there wouldn't have been enough air inside to breathe for long.
So in the early hours following the burial, someone dug up the coffin again to set Genshin free.
But in the end, he was fatally shot in the graveyard anyway. What on earth really happened in Lowgate Cemetery that night, I wonder?
I'm afraid I really don't know. All I can say with certainty are two things. Asogi couldn't possibly have escaped that way without help from somebody working in the prison. And that somebody was not me. Obviously you knew the man then. The professor, I mean. Genshin Asogi. Yes, I remember him well, in fact. Would you mind telling us what you know? Well, having been condemned to death as he was, any contact I had with the man was short, obviously. After that trial, which was carried out behind closed doors, attended only by elite members of the judiciary, they called for his execution to be carried out at the earliest possible opportunity. The outcome of the trial was set from the beginning, and wasn't it?
It was a time of delicate diplomacy, when Britain and Japan were in the process of signing an important treaty. That meant that this potentially destabilizing case had to be dealt with swiftly and discreetly.
The man had less than a week in total. As I was the chief warder, I oversaw his short stay in the cells until his final hour. I remember being struck deeply by his noble character and incredible resilience. What do you mean exactly? He was a killer of many men, but he was always quiet and polite. He was a gentleman and a man of intellect. In fact, I couldn't bring myself to believe he'd done it, so I asked him one day. I bet he... Those 5 members of the aristocracy whose lives were taken, were you really responsible? I'm guilty of the unforgivable crime of ending another human's life, yes. But that could just mean that he could have killed someone. That doesn't mean he necessarily killed everyone. This is interesting to think about. The following day, the closed trial took place, and the verdict was no surprise. Guilty. That night, when he was brought back to his cell, I saw something. Something unusual. Something unusual? What? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi. Asogi's will. As I said, it was on the night following his trial after he'd been found guilty. I was doing the rounds of the cells, and when I looked into Asogi's, I noticed that he seemed to have a sheet of paper in his hand. His last will and testament then, presumably. As soon as he noticed me, he hurriedly shoved it into behind his back.
But why did you find that so unusual? Isn't it normal for a man to pen a will when he knows his death is nigh?
Yes, that's true. But there were special conditions to Asogi's incarceration, you see. What sort of conditions? Well, even though he was held in a cell designed for condemned inmates, he was allowed to keep his personal effects with him, with one exception. Really? He was allowed his things? That is unusual, certainly. Wait, what did he say? Personal effects with one exception. Huh. Of course, he'd been convicted of killing 5 members of the aristocracy. But at the same time, he was a guest in our country from the Empire of Japan. The powers that be were determined that his final days shouldn't be needlessly uncomfortable.
And what was the exception you mentioned to the personal effects he was allowed?
That's the point. He wasn't permitted to have writing materials. Specifically, no pens or paper. The one thing he had.
So he was prevented from leaving any written record of what had happened to him.
Yes, that was the long and short of it. I have no idea where he obtained that paper. Any writing materials would have been confiscated from him upon his incarceration. As I said, he hid the paper behind his back and then he pleaded with me. What did you just hide behind your back? Please, please turn a blind eye. This is my lifeline. You know it's against the rules. You're the only person who's seen. If you just agree to keep quiet. Alright then. But what's on that paper? A last will and testament. This will is the only weapon I have left now. How can a will be a weapon? So I decided to pretend I'd seen nothing, and I'd let him keep his will. But then later... it just seemed to vanish without trace. What? What do you mean it vanished?
It would seem that isn't the end of the story of this mysterious will.
Oh shit. Time for the will's disappearance. Need to hear about this, that's for sure. I was the only person who saw Sogi's will, but somehow it disappeared. It was after Sogi's execution.
Which was actually an elaborate jailbreak.
The warders gathered up Asogi's possessions that were in his cell. They were all to be sent back to his family home in Japan, you see.
To poor Kazuma-sama.
And you're saying that it wasn't anywhere to be found among his personal effects? The will, I mean. That's right. Though I didn't search through them myself. But Governor Caden was livid. He was screaming, "It can have disappeared completely."
That doesn't quite make sense, though, does it?
In what way?
Well, we'd understood that only Mr. Vigil was aware of the will's existence. In which case, how did the prison governor know to look for it?
Oh, yes, you're right. I really don't know how he knew. It's not like audio recording devices exist, but it certainly seemed as though he knew of the will's existence from the outset. Only he didn't refer to it as a will. What he said was, the Asogi Papers. The Asogi Papers. I really can't tell you anything of the subsequent events. Because, well, of what happened. Your dismissal, and the way you blocked it all from your memory. I'd forgotten all this until today. I don't suppose it's relevant to the case, though. Well, anyway, thank you very much for sharing it with us, Mr. Vigil. We're very grateful. Oh, man. We learned quite a bit there. I'm afraid there's really little more I can tell you. My wife, Evie, will be here shortly, so I do hope I don't appear rude, but... Can you get the hell out? Oh, no, not at all. Thank you again.
What will happen? What will become of you now?
Well, impersonating a police officer is a criminal offense, of course. I imagine that once I'm fully recovered, I shall be arrested. I'm so sorry. Don't be, please. This was all my own doing. I always knew that this day would come. Well, I wish you well. Goodbye, Mr. Vigil. Sayonara. Oh! Before you go, there's just one thing. Oh, yes, what is it? The Asogi Papers. Did he remember something else? I'd be very grateful if you make no mention of the things I told you about them. Presumably for some good reason? It's my understanding that their very existence is a closely guarded secret. If it became known that I'd remembered, well, it could be rather troublesome, I think. I understand. Some sort of will that Genshin Isogi penned just before his death. Which the man himself claimed was his last weapon. I wonder. Perhaps that had something to do with his plan to escape. Is anyone who might know more about a document that Kazuma's father left behind?
It would be Mr. Vigil's governor. Then we know precisely where he must go, back to Barclay Prison.
Oh, great. Man, my voice is not in the best of shape in this episode, and now I have to voice frickin' the Scotsman from Samurai Jack again. Oh well. Off we go, then. And back to new location, which isn't actually a new location, but whatever, we're still going. Here we are, at the governor's office. Just preparing in advance to voice this dude. Oh, back again, are you? Yes, hello. I've heard all about your investigations. I read the report just now. You found him, eh? Vigil. Yes, luckily. Well, anywho, Larry doesn't work here anymore, so your work isn't night to do with Barclay. I would not like you to get the wrong idea about that. Of course, yes. Mr. Vigil stopped working here 10 years ago now, so...
Yes, we've seen his dismissal notice, haven't we? He was given the chop.
Aye, Kimmer. You ken very well. So how about a wee handcuff biscuit?
Oh, they really are like little handcuffs, and as hard as irons, too.
So what's brought you down here today? Well, there's something else we'd like to ask you about, actually. Is that so? We believe there might have been a document that disappeared from Genshin Isogi's cell. I think it's been called the Isogi Papers or something. Music goes quiet. Where did you even put that teacup? Like, it was clearly scorching hot, and your arms are like straight down. Do you just have like just your wrists like pointed upwards? That feels like it'd be uncomfortable. Did I now say Gregson's death is not to do with things that might have happened at Barclay? Leave the past in the past, laddie. Let's not foot around with the relevant details. His expressions changed completely. We're clearly onto something here. Bum, bum, a lum, dum, dun, da, do, lunch, dun, 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 da, do, 10-year-old legacies that murderers botched the execution and the whole miserable escape. They were Barclay's darkest hour, aye. A shocking embarrassment. Because the convict had a collaborator on the prison staff, you mean? Aye. For shame. The coroner who confirmed the death of the man after his execution, Courtney Scythe. And my chief ward at the time, Vigil, who was in charge of the whole affair.
But Mr. Vigil says he didn't know anything about it.
The rascal would they say otherwise, eh? More handcuffs.
Oh, how could I say no? You can never have too much iron in your diet. Ha 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 ha. Clap. When Mr. Vigil was handed his dismissal notice as a result of what had happened, he was so despairing he jumped out of your office window, didn't he?
I deny like to say it, but that's just Vigil trying to get out of it. Do you no think he would they have jumped from the shock of his crimes to being exposed, eh? I do. You would nae say otherwise, though, would you? Of course, I can nae shun all responsibility myself. I should nae have let them deceive me. Actually, there's barely anybody that kens what went on at the time now. With Gregson having been murdered and Dr. Scythe forbidden from having any visitors. No visitors? Someone obviously doesn't want her giving anything away.
Well, we're not going home empty-handed.
Don't nae dream of sending you packing when not Kimmer. Here, take a handcuff or two.
Oh, well, it would be rude to say no. Wouldn't want to become anemic.
Crunch. I suppose if there's anybody who might still ken about what happened back then, it'd be that lass from the forensics division, Maria Gori.
Maria Gori?
Aye, Scythe's daughter. She didn't have no more, just the one. But the wee Barnes followed in a mam's footsteps. You didn't ever see her without a scalpel in hand.
Ah. I wonder who. Mama, what is this? Where does she spring from? And did she just call the doctor Mama? Yep. Dr. Scythe's daughter, Maria Gori. We could do with talking to her again. Gori. So, she's Dr. Scythe's daughter, but her surname is Gori?
Aye, there's some family history, I'm sure, but I dinna ken the ins and outs of it. She grew up watching her mum working with the bodies of folk who died in strange circumstances, and decided to do the same with her own life. I can nae understand it myself.
Perhaps she was driven by a deep respect for her mother.
Perhaps. Anywho, she was in charge of Gregson's autopsy, I believe.
Right, and the coroner responsible for this incomplete report.
Someone told me once that the wee lassie always loved her mam's stories about cutting up bodies. There's even a rumour that she used to listen to the funeral march as a lullaby.
Well then perhaps her mother might have told her about the autopsy from the case 10 years ago.
Aye, I'd say there's a fighting chance at least. After all, that was a life-changing case for all of us.
You really need to speak to Miss Gori herself about this, I think. Well, thank you very much.
I'm no happy about any part of this. It took years for Londoners to finally forget the whole professor business. Can you no gear up on this, laddie? Stop asking pointless questions.
I'm sorry. I don't like dredging up these painful memories for everyone.
Can you not just stay away now? Leave me alone and dinna come back here, eh?
Sorry, we still got one more thing to talk about.
How do you come to ken about that, laddie? There's no many folks even here in the prison who've heard of those papers.
Well, I can't tell Mr. Vigil. I can't tell him Mr. Vigil told me. I'm afraid our sources must remain confidential, sir. Oh yeah, that's an option. We've been led to believe the papers are actually a last will and testament, is that right? The professors, or rather Genshin Asogi's.
Aye, that's right. You're well informed, Jimmy.
Oh, it's at the end of the silent treatment. Also, why are you calling me Jimmy? My name's Ryunosuke.
But then after the convict's execution, it mysteriously vanished from the cell, didn't it? Havers now. You're off at half cock there. I think you didn't quite get your facts straight. He was there in the cell, exactly where it should have been. Oh, not what we heard elsewhere. Let me just have a wee hulk around in here. I'm sure I can find it. I just realized he was in a freaking axe just on his side there. Damn. I hear y'all. See? The last will and testament of Genshin Asogi, written with a calligraphy brush. Of course I can read a word of these Japanese squiggles. But I mind it says he leaves all his worldly possessions to his son back in his homeland.
Yes, that's correct. That's the gist of it.
So these are the Asogi papers. Aye, of course they are. Papers written by Asogi, no doubt about it. There's no mystery here, laddie. That's your lot. After all the stramish of that slayster of an execution, we sent the man's possessions back to his clan in Japan, and that was the end of it. His clan in Japan,
I think we had to make a record of this, Mr. Naruhodo. Mr. Naruhodo, just in case. Sorry, I ended up slurring my speech here, and I just came out as Scribes, it is the only weapon I have left. One thing before you go on your way, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes? Those papers are not to do with Gregson's death. I'd prefer it if you didn't make no mention of him outside this office. Or rather, I would just prefer it. Consider it an order from the highest levels of our government. I understand. Let us check out that paper. Let me try to do his voice for this. I, Genshin Asogi, hereby request that upon my death, any and all material possessions and wealth belonging to me in London be delivered to my son, Kazuma Asogi, in the Empire of Japan. It is with deep sadness that I accept my fate in this foreign land, in the knowledge that I will never see my homeland or family again, but I regret nothing about my chosen path. Where do we go from here? Hotel? I have a pretty stupid idea that I want to try. Never mind, that doesn't work. Back to the prison? What's that? It's just something I was hoping to ask your opinion about, that's all. It's a serious crime for the defense to attempt to extract information from the prosecution by illegal means. I think we have more of a defense and client relationship now, don't we? Sorry, I meant to mute my mic, but I instead paused the recording. There was no other lines though, it was just me sneezing while it transitioned back to that. Fresno Street Room? Nope. Oh right, Forensics Laboratory, duh. Back we are. Someone's still sharpening. You're still not dead. Anyway, I don't have anything more to tell you about that specimen. Actually, we're not here to ask you about Inspector Gregson. We were hoping to talk about your mother, Dr. Scythe. Bet you're sweating under that mask, girl. Something the governor of Barclay Prison mentioned.
He said that she was responsible for confirming the death of the professor after his execution.
That's not all Mama did.
Sorry?
My mama carried out the autopsy of Clint von Zykes as well.
What? Really? The brother of Lord von Zeeks, the professor's final victim.
The idea of carrying out an autopsy on a member of the aristocracy was completely unthinkable back then. But the detective in charge of the investigation insisted on, and it was miraculously authorized. That detective being Inspector Gregson, of course.
Quite an accomplishment for one man.
That autopsy provided the vital clue needed to arrest the killer. And Mama was there for that historic event.
What does all this mean?
You know, that amazing autopsy happened right here in this very room. The professor and Clint von Zeeks. They both spent their final moments before their burial on that dissection table there. So this lab, Mama's lab, was instrumental in some way in some of the country's most important events.
She really is proud of her mother. I wonder if you'd tell us more about exactly what happened back then, Dr. Gory. Looks like we're getting something. Confirmation of death.
The professor's execution was Mama's first big case. She had to be in attendance at Barclay Prison's execution chamber and sign the certificate to confirm the convict's death. Mama is the best coroner in the world, you know. I was so proud of her.
But the execution didn't actually take place.
No, and worse still, Mama actually helped with the jailbreak. I didn't want to know. Oh dear. You found out recently, you mean? I believed in her, and Mama, but now I wonder if I'm starting down the same path as her.
You mean because you omitted the time of death on this autopsy report? That's because Lord Strongheart forbade you from including it.
Just like Mama, I'm sure she was coerced by somebody too.
Yes, that's my feeling as well.
There's no doubt that there were powerful forces at play 10 years ago. The execution couldn't have been staged without a lot of people at the prison knowing about it. Obviously, the prison governor must have been in on it as well. The big man with the little handcuffs, according to what he told us, he was tricked by the chief warder. He says he knew nothing about it. Of course he said that. I'd say the same thing.
Just who was behind that jailbreak all those years ago? That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Or £1,000,000 in this case. You mentioned the autopsy of Clint von Zeeks.
It was at a time when carrying out autopsies of murder victims was very unusual. It's still not a practice that's observed in our country even now. Turned out that he was the professor's final victim, and when the autopsy was performed, Mama was present, although only as the secondary assistant. The person leading the procedure was called Dr. John H. Wilson.
Oh, fuck. Iris is here.
That's right, my daddy.
Oh, never mind, we're good.
And there was one other person present, the primary assistant. He was a visiting student from the Far East.
Wait, a visiting student?
It must have been my father, Eugene Mikotoba.
I had no idea Professor Mikotoba had been involved in something so important.
But the outcome of that historic autopsy was the discovery of a vital piece of evidence that led to the capture of the professor.
So that's how they came to identify Genshin Asogi as the infamous mass murderer. First time I've seen this lady smile. Do you happen to know anything about that piece of evidence? Can you tell us any more?
Would you like to see the records for yourself?
Would that be alright?
What's the point of keeping records if nobody can look at them? They're filed under V at the back of those cupboards with the other books from the records from the last decade. If this fucking cat won't stop scratching.
How dare that feline ruin the immersion of my videos? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what. That boy ain't right. Thank you. Let's see. Von Zeeks. That's strange.
What, Mr. Naruhodo?
I mean, yes, they're not here. They aren't here. There's nothing under Von Zeeks.
There must be.
Perhaps somebody took them away?
No one's allowed to take documents related to the professor case out of this room. But you're right. They're gone.
Well, when was the last time somebody looked at them? Do you remember?
It was... Oh, yes. I remember now. It was 2 years ago.
Man, you are one step away from doing an Ahegao face. I'm just saying.
A consulting detective came one day saying that he'd like to see the records.
No. You don't mean...
Herlock Sholmes was his name.
Oh, shit. Deep down, I knew that was coming.
Do you think he stole the records? Oh no, surely not. Iris, that can't be right, can it?
Iris? Oh no.
Runo? I hope you don't mind, but...
What is it, Iris?
I've just remembered something very important I have to do. I'm gonna have to leave you now. Oh, this is very sudden, Iris.
Man, I wonder why she's doing this all of a sudden.
Well, we'll come with you then. Oh no, there's no need. You and Runo can take your time here. Bye for now. Good luck. Itterashai. Except I'm the one leaving. Itadakimasu. Wait a minute, little girl. Me? I remember now. You've been here before, haven't you?
Have you, Iris?
Yes, 2 years ago, when that detective came. You were with him, weren't you? You were a living specimen then, too.
That's the way it usually works, yes. I don't think people usually die then come back to life. Depending on who you are, but...
Was I? I really don't remember. Anyway, sorry, but I must dash. I say... Hey, start dash.
Wait, Iris.
I'll brew up a pot for you when you get home.
What's the matter with her? She's behaving really strangely all of a sudden. I mean, even stranger than Sholmes is regularly. Well, in that case, we won't keep you any longer either.
It's been quite a while since I had any visitors. This is really fun. But next time you come, I'd prefer if you were ready for dissection.
I can't make any promises, sorry. How old are you again? You're 19.
let's see. Susato is 16. How old is Kazuma? 24. How old's Ryunosuke then? Probably like, I don't know, 23 or 22, maybe? Because I want to say that, or were they in the same year? Maybe Ryunosuke is 24 as well. I was just trying to see how close. I was gonna say because maybe Maria is actually talking to people around her age. Which, I mean, Susato's only 3 years off. I mean, hey, if we could get Gina in here, there'll only be a 1 year difference. It's a bit strange that the records of Clint von Zeke's autopsy have disappeared. But I think we've asked all we came to ask now. Alright then. Oh shit. I think I know what we're gonna have to do next. But I think we'll save that for next time on Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. We'll go and see if we can find wherever the hell Sholmes is. Adios, ciao, and bye-bye. Signing off until next time. Ja, mata ne.